shame is inherently demotivating. It keeps us stuck. And the reason for that is shame takes a behavior that we don't like, and it is labeling ourselves with it. It's not just I made a bad money choice. It's that I'm bad with money. It's not just that I have debt. It's that I am debt. When we get into the headspace of labeling ourselves or our partners as these defined things, it really slows down our motivation, because I'm not going to put the work into changing something if I don't see myself as valuable enough to change.
Welcome back, everybody. My name is Emily. I'm your host, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Plenty. At Plenty, we're building the destination for couples to manage money together. My husband and I co-founded Plenty after we began merging finances and were shocked to find what a mess that could be. We'd both been in Silicon Valley working in fintech for over a decade each, so we set out to build something better. Today, Plenty is a wealth platform helping modern couples invest and plan for their future together. We bring the investment strategies and products of the wealthy to the everyday household. But we also know in relationship, it's not just about the best products. It's also about the talk and the conversations. And so talking about love and money, we know it's still very new in this day and age. And so what we set out to do here is to hopefully make it a little bit easier for everybody listening. Today, I'm really excited to have Nate Astle here to talk all things debt. He is a leading financial therapist and is dedicated to helping couples, families, and individuals transform their relationship with money and mental health. Nate recently established his dream role at the Financial Therapy Clinical Institute. Alongside his work at the Institute, Nate also maintains a personal caseload and works with clients directly through his private practice, Relational Money. Additionally, Nate serves as a financial therapy consultant for Beyond Finance, a prominent debt resolution company. With a distinguished career in financial therapy, Nate has served on the board of the Financial Therapy Association and has been honored as Financial Therapist of the Year. Thank you so much for coming to our show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm really excited for this topic today because I feel like, especially within partnership, and even if you're not within partnership, talking about debt is such an uncomfortable topic. And I know it's something that you've thought and worked with so many couples and individuals on. So thank you again for making time.
Yeah, of course. No, debt is something that not only comes up a lot in my work, but it's complicated. It's never just about how much debt do you have and what's our plan of attack and all that kind of stuff. It's about all the feelings we have about our own debt or about our partner's debt. And we'll call it the morality or the judgments that we lay on those debts. You know, certain debts are seen as better or worse, and there's just a whole meaning-making process we go through. So talking debt within couples might sound simple at times and can end up being a really complicated experience.
And as someone who now works with individuals and couples for all things debt and money, what started even your path to wanting to become a financial therapist?
Yeah, like most things, it was a happy accident. I wanted to be a therapist. I knew I liked couples and family type stuff. And a large part of that came from my own experiences growing up. My parents had quite a bit of conflict and about money, actually. And it left a big impact on me as a kid. I remember internalizing a lot of things about how they viewed conflict and how they viewed money. And then, flash forward to when I'm in a romantic relationship and I'm married and I am struggling with a lot of the same things they were. And so, I was at the right place at the right time. I was at Kansas State University for my master's degree, and I found out about financial therapy there, and kind of the rest is history. I was very lucky to find financial therapy early in my career. So I've kind of been able to tailor my clinical experience, my research experience to that topic.
And how did you even catch, because I think sometimes there's all these thoughts that can shape all of these different behaviors. How do you even catch or even identify when potentially something that was an experience as a child or something that was normalized when you were younger becomes something that you're, accidentally recreating nowadays?
So if we start paying attention to our feelings, our emotions are really important pieces of data.
Mm-hmm.
When we're looking for trends, right? If you're a data head, if you're looking for a trend, you want to pay attention to certain types of data that we might use as predictive. Our
Mm-hmm.
emotional states have a huge amount of data for us concerning our past experiences that it's really important we are aware of our emotions. Um,
Mm-hmm.
for me, how it showed up was when my wife and I were first, starting life out together, and we were combining finances because we were 22 and poor. We didn't have anything. Um, when we were in that spot, I remember hating looking at
Mm-hmm.
a budget. Um, it
Mm-hmm.
was something, thank goodness she was very dedicated to, and was like, no, we've got to make, good financial choices and want to live our life on purpose here. Um, but I remember feeling so frustrated with it, so almost like disgusted with it. And a big part of it is
Mm-hmm.
because I was I was having, we'll call them flashbacks, but I was having
Mm-hmm.
um, reliving some of the experiences I had growing up. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not a super conscious thing. You don't
Mm-hmm.
in the moment necessarily, but later when you think about why do I have these feelings that are so big? What is this pulling on? Um,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of insight-oriented work can go a long way into preventing you from repeating past generations' mistakes.
Mm-hmm. And how would you even navigate understanding what are your emotions? Because that is something where, it might be newer practice to really deeply be like, huh, what's going on there?
Yeah, I think of emotions like a language that everyone needs to learn on some level, especially when it comes to our relationships. Um, a dictionary for this language that I really like is called a feelings wheel. If you just Google feelings wheel, I actually think
Mm-hmm.
there's a website, feelingswheel.com or whatever. Um, it's it's just an image of primary emotions, and then there's secondary and tertiary emotions. And what I really like about it is you start in the middle circle, and it has really basic words like happy, sad, scared, angry.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what I would start doing, what I tell clients to do is start with when I think about money, what feeling comes up most often or strongest? For a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people, it's fear or
Mm-hmm.
sadness or there's some anger in there too. And then what I have them do is they go out to the next ring of the circle, and it gives us more specific words. Instead of just sad, it's disappointed or shameful or guilty or confused or dejected. Like there's a whole lot of more specific words than just a primary sad. And then I might
Mm-hmm.
have them go out to level 3 if they feel like they can. And what we're doing here is we're trying to figure out what is my emotional experience. Another really good starting point is checking in with your body. Our
Mm-hmm.
bodies respond to our emotions. So if I'm angry, my heart rate might go up, my breathing might get more intense, my muscles
Mm-hmm.
might tighten. If I'm scared, I might notice my body kind of closing in on itself when
Yeah.
um or if I'm sad, I might feel the urge to cry or a lump in my
Mm-hmm.
throat. Start paying attention to what is my body telling me as I'm looking at this budget or as I'm
Yeah.
paying this credit card or if I'm looking at my debt options, whatever I'm doing, start paying attention. What's my body doing? And then maybe see if there's a word that on that feelings wheel that best describes this experience for you. Even
Yeah.
even that as a starting point is a really good idea.
And what are some of the common emotions that people have around debt?
Biggest one for sure is shame. Um,
Mm,
debt is something that's especially taboo. I mean, we don't
mm,
talk about money in general, um, but debt is something that is especially taboo just culturally, and I think
mhm,
it's because there's a lot of shame about it. Just real quick, there's a difference
mhm,
between guilt and shame. Um,
mhm,
guilt is any time we act outside of our values. Um,
mm,
and guilt is something all of us experience. It's not a pleasant emotion, but it can be useful because it can kind of act as a
mhm,
warning bell of like, hey, that isn't how I want to be or how I want to treat others or how I want to treat my money. Um, and although it's uncomfortable, it can be a motivating thing. It might help us to change. Shame does the opposite. Shame is inherently demotivating. It keeps us stuck. And the reason for that
mhm,
is shame takes a behavior that we don't like and it is labeling ourselves with it. Um, it's not just I made a bad money choice, it's that I'm bad with money. It's not just that I have debt, it's that I am debt or my financial
mm.
life is only debt. And
Yeah.
when we get into the headspace of labeling ourselves or our partners as these defined things, it
Mhm,
it really slows down our motivation because I'm not gonna put the work into changing something if I don't see myself as valuable enough to change. So
mm,
I think that's a really good starting point. It's like we all make mistakes, and I'm not gonna take away anyone's guilt. But if you're noticing this is more about shame than it is about guilt, then it's probably a
mhm.
good time to say, "Hey, this isn't good for me. I need to push back against this." Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And whether it is, you trying to answer that voice within yourself, or you hear your partner being hard on themselves for that voice around the shame for debt, what are some tactics you have or tools that you think people can use to, really respond to that part of themselves?
Yeah. Well, the first step is always to know when it's there. Um, if you can name it, you can tame it. Basically, if I know the difference between what we like to call wise mind, or like if I
Mhm.
know the difference between like a well-regulated, I'm at peace Nate and shame Nate, who is spiraling, who says really mean things, who makes a
Mhm.
lot of judgments about myself and others. Um, being able to know like, oh, I'm in shame mode right now. You might some questions you might ask yourself, and a little journal prompt here might be, when I'm in shame mode, how do I feel?
Mhm.
What does my
Mhm.
body do? How do I treat myself
Mhm.
and others? Um,
Mhm.
and when you are more aware of
Mhm.
the shame, that's when we have to counteract some of its messages. And
Mm.
the hard thing with that is people sometimes are like, well, I'm great, I'm amazing, and it just sounds hollow to your shame self. You're like,
Mhm.
I don't believe it. But try and
Mhm.
find evidence to the contrary. So if my shame self tells me I'm awful with money, see if I can come up with just one example of where I'm not awful with money. Or,
Mhm.
um, my shame self says my debt is out of control and I have no hope. See
Mhm.
if you can come up with times where you have made good choices. One of
Mhm.
them might be I listened to this podcast and I started to do exercises,
Mhm.
or I started looking at my debt and I realized that I had a problem, or I realized that there's changes I need to make. Great. That's in direct contradiction to the shame. So
Yeah. And what are some of those exercises that you think people can do when they're trying to turn things around?
Yeah. So, I like I do like journaling. I like the idea of externalizing something that's happening inside your head to being
Mm-hmm.
outside. So whether that's journaling or even talking to a friend or someone that can listen, um,
Mm-hmm.
I also like imagining shame as a person or as a as something separate than myself.
Mm-hmm.
So like inside of me, there's wise Nate and there's shame Nate, and probably a lot of other
Mm-hmm.
Nates too. And
Yeah.
the shame Nate looks like this, feels like this, has this body language, has this voice, says these things to me. We are externalizing an
Mm-hmm.
internal experience. Another kind of important thing to keep in mind with shame is it often comes from hurt. Um,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times, shame is a result of societal hurts, parental
Mm-hmm.
hurts, um, and it pulls on a whole lot of things. So, try and approach your shame like a kid, like a
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable child, or maybe a vulnerable animal, something that we treat
Mm-hmm.
gingerly, tenderly. We say, "Hey, you're really hurting to be saying those things like that. Tell me where is this coming from? Tell me more." See the warmth that I even portray in my voice?
Mm, yeah.
Take that kind of approach if you can and be like, "I have this external thing that hurts me sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Where is this coming from? Where did I learn that shame was the best response here? Who shamed
Yeah.
me first?" Um,
Yeah.
all of these things you could spend plenty of therapy sessions talking about.
Yeah, and I think one of the things too that we've heard from people on the product before have been that sometimes with couples, one thing that's hard to navigate is that there is shame, sometimes blanket applied to all debt, but sometimes debt is actually really necessary and can actually be a tool. Can you walk us through some examples that you've heard when you've worked with people where you're like, that did actually was really important, or it was actually a good thing that you guys did that.
Yeah. I I feel like there's multiple levels to this. Some
Mhm.
of the messages I heard growing up, and I'm curious if you heard this same, is, certain kinds of debt, like student debt or
Mhm.
obviously like a mortgage, that is
Mhm.
okay because most of us don't have 300 plus $1,000 laying around to just buy a house and stuff. And student debt too is like it's an investment. Um, and I also remember getting a lot of messages about credit card debt is bad. That's the bad kind
Mhm.
of debt because
Mhm.
it's selfish and it's consumeristic, and there is in reality a very much higher interest rate in it. Um,
Mhm.
I feel like we need to push that a little further though because uh, you know there is good mortgages and bad mortgages.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mortgages where the debt is a good financial choice, and mortgages where the debt is a
Mhm.
bad financial choice. Same
Mhm.
thing with education. Um,
Mhm.
and believe it or not, there's always two sides to credit card debt as well. Um,
Mhm.
you mentioned earlier, work with a debt settlement company and provide group therapy essentially for their clients. And what I've seen is people aren't very often, they're not in tons of credit card debt because they're bad people or irresponsible people. Life just
Mhm.
happened. You know,
Yeah.
they had some medical debt or COVID happened and they had to take care of a family member or
Mhm.
and so you take care with your basic necessities with what you have available, which is credit cards. And it's complicated. I'm not saying that
Mhm.
people don't have to take some personal responsibility, but it's never a good
Mhm.
idea to just label a whole thing like debt or credit card debt as a
Right.
personal failure. Like that's just not fair. It's not true. We don't
Yeah.
know the context of what what was going on in their lives. We don't know the context of the
Mm-hmm.
emotions they were experiencing. And it doesn't mean that they don't have to deal with consequences, but
Mm-hmm.
gotta get away from this blanket blame, blanket shame, and just be like, hey, you're a person who made choices. Some of them are good, some of them might not have been, but we just gotta do the next best thing that we have.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the message there too is so powerful that I want to take the time to repeat that too, which is even if you have debt, even credit card debt, doesn't mean you're an irresponsible person. I think when we've, worked with a number of couples too, and sometimes credit cards are the place that you have to turn because there isn't an alternative. And two areas where we've seen people most commonly take on credit card debt for the first time has been when there's been an unexpected medical expense and they didn't have enough money in their emergency fund to cover, whatever that happened, whether it was for themselves or for their family. Or another area where we've also seen couples sometimes take on unexpected credit card debt or other debt forms of debt is when they don't expect or realize that daycare costs $25,000 in some high cost cities or even more. Or it's just such a big expense that, they didn't realize they actually needed to have been saving for years in advance because no one really talks about how much these things cost until you're in the thick of it.
Right. Yeah, and you don't know what you don't know, and you can't.
Yeah.
It's not good for anyone to beat themselves up over things they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually, and research supports this too, is we don't beat ourselves up, we beat ourselves down. Like,
Yeah.
we don't actually like, oh, I'm so stupid, let me change. Like, that's not how it works. Like, we're like, I'm so stupid, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like crap, I have no
Mm-hmm.
motivation to change. What's the point? And we get really depressed that way. And so
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna try a more compassionate approach to money. That would be great.
Yeah. I love that. I think it's also such a dangerous slippery slope too, because with avoidance, with feeling like, oh, I can't make progress. Unfortunately, some of these debt companies, like credit card companies, make a lot of money when you aren't taking action because it just grows and your interest grows. And it becomes, something that can make it harder and harder to dig yourself out of the longer you wait.
Yeah.
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 And, one thing I'm also curious about, we spoke a little bit about credit card debt. And I've also, we've worked with couples where sometimes they're like, our number one priority is to pay off our mortgage. And we ask why. They're like, well, I want to be debt free. And we say, for the lucky people who this is the case, we're like, so what interest rate is your mortgage? They're like, I don't know, but we're working on paying it down. And when they've looked at the papers, they're getting a 2.5%, a 3.5%, because maybe they got the mortgage years ago. What message would you have for couples who might be fortunate enough to have long mortgage, established at those rates, but they feel like, oh, I just don't want to have any debt at all. I got to pay it down.
Yeah. So I think there is some deconstruction we can do around that.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's the math answer, which is, if I'm getting a 2 to 4% on my mortgage rate, but then if we even just did like a really basic S&P 500, um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we're likely to get 4 to 6% more than what
Mm-hmm.
the interest is on a house. So point is there's the math answer, which is a lot of times it's more important to put money into investing in things because it
Mm-hmm.
very, very likely will even out to be a better option for you than just getting
Mm-hmm.
rid of your mortgage as quick as possible. But the
Mm-hmm.
thing we have to deconstruct is why? Why is debt free the goal? And I would push into,
Mm-hmm.
um, is it because I'm scared? Is it because I'm feeling insecure? Is it because I'm not sure about what the future holds?
Mm-hmm.
And we can validate those feelings. We say, yeah, that makes sense. it makes sense that you want to be debt free to feel like there's some amount of control that you have
Mhm.
over what's going to happen. And we also don't want a singular feeling to be the only thing that makes us make choices. Um,
Mm.
we have to, it's important we look at our feelings. Our feelings are important
Mhm.
data, but they're not the only data that counts. We want to look at our values. We want to
Mhm.
look at facts that we have available, such
Mhm.
as on average investments, mutual funds or diversified funds that have a much higher return than that
Mhm.
2 to 4% mortgage. We want to
Mhm.
measure it against, our long-term goals and why
Mhm.
are those our goals. So it's okay to say, I'm scared and so I want to be debt free. That's fine. And we're not
Mhm.
making judgments about those feelings, but we also have to measure them against a lot of different things. Um,
Mhm.
so that's what I mean by deconstruction. Why do I want that thing? Or why do I believe that thing? And
Mhm.
are there alternate circumstances or
Mhm.
alternate data that can change my mind? And am I open to that? Um,
Yeah.
y- yeah, I think that's a good start.
Mhm. And we've talked a little bit about managing debt and thinking about debt on your own. And within partnership, it can be even harder because statistically, you are unlikely to have the exact same amount of debt as your partner.
Yeah.
And so when you have two people and you have different amounts of debt, or one person has and one person doesn't, what are some advice or tips you have for even navigating the conversation or the dynamic there?
Yeah. I think a starting point is, what kind of shared financial interests do we want?
Mhm.
For some people, they share everything. And it's like, we're a unit and all of our income gets pooled and all of our expenses get pooled and we make decisions
Mhm.
that way. For some people, they want to have a yours, mine, and ours. For some, they want totally separate things and they just kind of make it up as they go. Um,
Mhm.
it's less important that you're like, this is the right or wrong way. And it's deconstruction. We want to figure out why. Why
Mhm.
is that important to me? If someone is on their second marriage, they might be a lot
Mhm.
more careful about how they split up money. Um,
Mhm.
and that comes from really valid experience. So,
Mhm.
inevitably, when you have a different financial situation than your partner, um, that first point that you'd want to get to is, what is our shared goal and values when it comes
Mhm.
to money? Are we trying to share everything, some things, or nothing? Something I advocate for is
Mhm.
some form of yours, mine, and ours. Um,
Mhm.
it doesn't have to, you can do yours, mine, and ours in the same checking account.
Mhm.
Um, the the powers that you are trying to balance is
Mhm.
financial dependency and
Mhm.
financial autonomy.
Mhm.
Um, when my partner and I make shared financial decisions together, um,
Mhm.
we have a lot more resources. We have
Mhm.
a lot more things going towards shared goals, and that can be a really beautiful
Mhm.
experience to share a financial life with someone. Um,
Mhm.
and I'm not gonna like all the things that she likes, and I'm not gonna agree. I'm not gonna agree with every decision how
Mhm.
she would spend money, but I don't have to because she's an individual and I'm an individual.
Mhm.
We just have to build in a system. Maybe I'm making this number up, $100 a month
Mhm.
that I get to
Yeah.
spend however I want, and you can spend $100 however you want, and
Mhm.
we honor our shared financial life and honor the fact that we're individuals. Those
Mhm.
That's a structure, however you make it work, that I think can be really healthy.
Yeah, that structure is actually what catalyzed us to build Plenty, because we were like, we talked to enough couples and this is, I think, what we want, where we still feel like we're doing a lot of things together. We're building a future together, but we're also two individuals and we just couldn't find anything that made it easy to manage that and not have to have a mess of different spreadsheets. So it's funny you say that too, because that was definitely also our experience of also what, at least for us, we thought would keep things the healthiest. One thing I'm curious about is for people who are listening, help us put ourselves in the shoes of these two different partners, or maybe starting off with the partner who has more debt. What are some of the common emotions or thought patterns that you've seen for individuals who are the one who have more debt?
Yeah, definitely more shame. They feel like a burden. They feel like, they can feel like a burden. They can feel like, they're the weak link. And that really sucks. It really is a crappy place to be in a relationship, is feeling like I'm not bringing as much to the table. Even if your partner doesn't feel that way about you, it's an insecurity that can come up. For the person that maybe doesn't have the debt, if we can be honest, sometimes, it does feel like the other person's debt is a burden. It also can be frustrating if my partner is kind of wallowing in self-shame, or if I don't have resentment about their debt and I'm like, yeah, it's okay, we're figuring this out together, but my partner is really stuck in their, kind of negative headspace, that can be really frustrating and draining too. I like to encourage people to think about it. It's not you versus your partner. It's you and your partner versus the problem. We are a team against this thing. Maybe we have different responsibilities in how we tackle this thing, but we do care about the same thing, which is each other and ourselves.
Yeah.
So let's take this kind of out of the like, well, it's my dad or your dad, and so we have to. It's like, no, we're a team. Maybe we have different roles, but we are a team, and we have skills and relationship dynamics and safety so that we can tackle hard things, which is kind of one of the main points of coupleship, is we're stronger together. Yeah.
Yeah. I really love that, especially the two parts of that message, which is starting with, we are a team. We may have different roles and responsibilities, but we are a team tackling this problem or this debt together. I think that's something that think for people who kind of are on both sides of it, that also, I think, can hopefully remove some of the sting and some of the anger and frustration or some of the inevitable emotions of shame as well, to just remind, hey, there's a great future that we're working towards together.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, even just like real quick, even if I don't agree to take on your debt or pay off your debt, I can still choose as your partner. I can talk about, what does emotional support look like? Maybe I have my personal boundaries for not wanting to be financially tied. How can I take care of other needs if I can't directly take care of this thing for you? Are there other areas that I can step up and be a team member? And I think that can be a really nice thing.
Is there, let's say you were in a one-on-one coaching session with the partner who had more debt. Is there a mantra or something that you would hope that they could repeat or remind themselves of?
Debt is something I have, not something I am.
What about if you were in that one-on-one session with the partner who didn't have as much debt? What is there like a mantra that you would want for them to have accessible?
Mistakes don't define me or my partner. And honestly, that's a good one for both. I'm gonna take it back. Mistakes don't define me or my partner. Yeah.
I love those.
Yeah. It kind of gets at that guilt versus shame. Like, yeah, we all make mistakes, but they aren't our defining qualities.
Broadening out from money conversations beyond, even just that, are there other ground rules that are helpful for couples when they're starting to have these money talks with partners and it's uncomfortable or new?
Yeah. When in doubt, validate. Um,
Say
if you
more.
don't, if you don't know what to do in a conversation, or you're not sure how to connect with this person, validate. And I'll give you my favorite phrase. That makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. That makes sense.
Mm.
That does so much to kind of lower the feeling of, you know, I have to justify why I think or feel or did these things. And it's just like, oh, that makes
Mm.
sense. Given what you've been through, given what your emotional state was or is, it makes sense why you would be feeling or doing X.
Mm-hmm.
So when in doubt, validate. And then I think the other thing is share the space. Um, Decision making is really important in couples that we make choices together. Um, there's
Mm.
a there's a communication skill. It's too long to teach now, but you can Google it. It's called the
Mm-hmm.
speaker listener technique.
We'll add
And
this to our speaker notes too for everybody listening.
yeah, the speaker listener technique is it's essentially a talking stick. But when there are high conflict areas or areas of your relationship that you're not sure how to go about, um, don't worry so much about problem solving at the start. Just focus on understanding. Because
Mm.
if we can understand ourselves and our partners, 90% of this is won. You know,
Yeah.
we've already got it. Then problem solving just becomes a matter of talking through pros and cons and things.
Mm-hmm.
But I have my teammate with me, you know. If
Yeah.
I'm understood and my partner gets me
Mm-hmm.
and I get them, then we can have different ideas and not agree, and that's okay. The thing that matters is that we understand and make space for understanding each other.
Yeah. To be fully a team. I love
Yeah.
that. And, as sometimes though, it's hard. And I think, especially, you can be on a team, but sometimes, especially when it comes to conversations like, should we spend versus pay things down, is not always easy. What advice would you have for couples navigating that? And I also want to caveat that, spending is sometimes, it's hard. It's like, we want to throw a birthday party for a kid. And it's not always clear. It's not black or white. And there's a lot of shades of gray. So caveating also that that's where I'm coming from. So how do you navigate that conversation?
Yeah. If we take what we've talked about in this podcast, even we start deconstructing our whys. Why do we want to make the decisions we're making? Why do I feel the way I feel? Why do you feel the way you feel? Um, what are we both going for?
Mm-hmm.
Then we can also check in with what are our emotional needs and what are our values. What do we care about here? Is it really about the party, or is it about feeling closer as a family? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The party might be a means to that end, but
Mm-hmm.
we don't get wrapped up in the individual choices. It's how do we want to feel at the end of this?
Mm-hmm.
And then of course I'm going to advocate for if you're really stuck about something, or if you're really, it's okay to seek professional help. Obviously, I'm biased here,
Mm-hmm.
but good therapy can do good things, great things even. So,
Mm-hmm.
finding couples therapists, finding a financial therapist, finding people that can professionally have you not navigate those conversations can be really helpful too.
And sometimes people, I think, especially in the last generation, there is so much of this stigma around, oh, we're going to couples therapy. And immediately it's like, oh, are you guys about to have a divorce? Is it, the end of things? How has that changed in terms of how and when couples go to therapy now? And what are your thoughts on when is the right time?
Um, yeah, I'm actually very happy and proud of my generation, the millennial generation. We've done a lot to destigmatize therapy, and I would say Gen X as
Mm-hmm.
well. Therapy, yeah, it did used to be something that was taboo, but it's because mental health used to be taboo.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just There are parts of it that certainly still are, but I think the social judgment or pressure you used to get for going to therapy is
Mm-hmm.
hugely reduced.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that depends on different cultural aspects too. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm very excited and hopeful for where therapy is going. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it is almost always better to go to therapy sooner rather than later because you have chances
Mm-hmm.
to fix more things. You preventative steps you can take rather than, you put a fence at the top of the cliff rather than an ambulance at the bottom so that we can stop people from tumbling over the cliff. The more you can do to
Mm-hmm.
prevent conflict, the happier you're going to be. Therapy is also very important and useful when you do need an ambulance and there's things you didn't anticipate or
Mm-hmm.
prepare for. But um, yeah, in general, the sooner the better. Because the truth is even if people get divorced, um,
Mm-hmm.
so often they still need to work through the things that caused the divorce in the first place. If they have kids
Yeah.
together, guess what? Co-parenting therapy looks almost identical
Mm-hmm.
to couples therapy. We still have to be
Yeah.
able to talk to each other. We still have to be able to make decisions together. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying divorce is good or bad. It's not about that. It's just acknowledging most of the time you still need to shovel the same crap. So try and do it early rather than later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, one thing that Channing and I also believe in deeply is actually the best time to go is when things are really great.
Mhm.
So you can get ahead when things are feeling really good.
Yeah. Yeah. Anytime's a
Um,
good time.
anytime's a good time. I love it. Nate, thank you so much for all of your time today and for sharing so many of your tips to help couples navigate debt on their own and together. To round out our episode today, I had a few fun lightning round questions for you.
All right, let's do it.
Perfect. First one, what is a bucket list experience that you and your wife have?
Meaning we've already done them or want to do it?
Want to do?
Want to do. I really want to go to Machu Picchu. That is, since I was a little kid, I just thought it was really cool. So that's where I want to go. And Shelby wants to go with me, though she cares less than I do.
But supportive partner. I love
Yep.
that. Name a person who inspires you.
Well, it's kind of a cop-out answer, but Shelby, my partner, a lot of good things have happened because she was a better partner than me at certain points.
I'm hoping Shelby is listening to this too. What is one thing about Shelby that inspires you?
Um, she has taught me the importance of doing things on purpose. She has really preached that at me over the years, and I'm converted, honestly. Whatever you're doing, do it on purpose. Be intentional, and I think you have a lot less regret in life.
She sounds pretty special. I hope I have the chance to meet her one day.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on to our show today, Nate. I think this will help so many people who are starting to navigate these hard conversations that are understandably hard for everybody. So thank you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.